in. And so there's nothing to hold, like plastic, like from moving when it prints, then it just kind of messes with it. And so that's why I kind of tipped it on its side. And I held it with like very, very small little like rods of plastic that I put in myself that were like kind of like supports. And it helped it to balance. I mean, it looks like the finished product there, you can't really like, it's hard to kind of think about, but it's, I should have just kept all the rods on there so you could see it, but yeah.
Just so I understand better how that comes out. So when it goes, after it comes out of the printer, is it already three-dimensional?
Yeah.
Really? That's hard to imagine.
Yeah,
you should come on a Monday.
Yeah, totally.
And see it in action.
It's kind of like the way that I describe it to the kids who come up is like it's kind of like a plastic hot glue gun.
Okay.
And because it's basically this big old box, and there on the inside there's this motor that has a little like hot tip where the plastic goes into it, kind of like how like a thread will go through like a sewing machine, and it will go right into it. And the little tip there will heat up, and it kind of goes layer by layer, spitting out the plastic like this. Kind of, if this is like the place where the plastic goes, and it goes upwards each time it makes a new layer. And it just kind of builds on top of itself, which is really cool.
Yeah, it would be fun to watch.
Now, how many tried? Was this your first try, or did you try?
That was my third or fourth attempt at trying to get that to work, because the moving parts of it are very hard to actually get moving, because if you make an item too small, it's going to, like the plastic is going to be too close together with the hole, and it's going to stick together. And so I had to get it to be the right size so that the axle will actually move. And I had to make sure that it wasn't too complicated, because the more complex the design is, the longer it's going to take. And what we try to do is we try to keep everything under 40 minutes, because we want everybody to have an equal turn. And it would be like really unfair if I just kind of like, all right, I'm just going to print this thing, and it's going to take forever, and no one else gets to use it.
Build a Maserati.
So that took under an hour.
Yes.
Interesting.
Something that's bigger, kind of like this size of the cup that you've got there, like that would take, like if it was a more solid object, that would take probably closer to an hour. Or maybe even more. It really depends on what sort of design you do or what sort of design you find someone else has done. It's very kind of like go, give and take. You can't really know until you start it. Though I did figure out, like after a little while, you can do like a preview when you transfer the files over from the computer, which is really great, because now we can like actually like show the kids how long each of their designs might take. I think it overestimates a little bit, because we've had a couple incidences of like it's saying that something's going to take like 30 minutes and it only takes like 25.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Better to go that way.
Yeah. No, I much prefer it to overestimate rather than underestimate, because that way the kids are really excited when it's done. Yeah. Or it said it would be done, yeah. And they get so excited like when they're like watching like their actual design being like printed. It's the best thing, because they just like light it, because it's something that like they designed on the computer, and then it's there in real life. Like just physically you can touch it, and it's really cool.
Yeah. There's two different softwares to go along with the 3D printer. There's Tinkercad, which is the software program that we teach the kids to create their own objects. And the cool thing about that is that it already has built-in lessons, step by step, to teach them how to make holes in things, how to group different shapes together, because when you make a design, it's all pretty set shapes. So triangles, hexagons, squares, and then you have to carve off from shapes or like combine them together for it to be able to print, because you can't just be like, I want a circle with two ears. Like you have to get the sphere and then add the triangles and group it together. So that's a program that they use to create their own. And then there's Thingiverse, which is a software program that already has designs that other people have used.
Where I found you at.
Yeah, so you can look up a bunch of different things and see what has worked for other people. And then the cool thing about Thingiverse is that a lot of people, when they post a different this worked, this speed, like this worked, this speed worked, you also can control as rafts, which is basically it goes, you have a plate of a 3D printer and then a raft is basically like another surface of plastic that goes around to create a base to build up on. And then you can add in supports, which is basically rods that go up to support things like arms or things that are skinnier that aren't as thick that might be help balancing while the printer is printing. And then you can also change the infill, which is basically what makes an object more dense and changes the density and how thick and how hard the object is going to be. So through Thingiverse, you can see what has worked for other people, and then you can build off their designs, change things from their designs, or just use it as an inspiration to create something similar to them. And some things that some kids were inspired by from that was like making keychains where we did one that was Mickey Mouse. So you create the Mickey Mouse head, you print that, and then you use string to connect the arms, the body, and the legs. So that they're using like string and other materials, but they're also 3D printing and have a decent size object to take home as well at the end, which is really cool. And then from that, we went on, 1 week we did the 3D doodler, which does the same thing as a 3D printer, but the kids control it with their hand. It's basically like a really thick pen, and then they use, kind of like with sewing when you have a stencil or a design that you use to like sew so you can cut out your cloth and that kind of stuff. It's the same thing with the 3D doodler. They pick out what they want and then they build and they just draw it out with the plastic and build up with their own hand. So that was really cool because they had a lot of fun. And kids made like bikes, sunglasses, chairs, Minecraft swords. And it was something that they were able to sit down at a table and draw it out by themselves and see what worked, what didn't work. And it was kind of faster than using the 3D printer and more hands-on, which was cool.
We also had a lot of other things that were not 3D printing because we're excited like that. One of our favorite things was when the library had Batman Day. I don't know if you heard, but it was Batman's 75th anniversary. And the library had a Saturday program. And I had just learned how to solder things like a couple of days ago, and Gail came over and she was like, "Do you guys have any ideas of what you could ban, like Batman, like what sort of thing is really cool for Batman?" And I like had this moment. I like looked over and like I had like these cups in my like workroom, and I was like, "Bat signal, that needs to be done." And so I took it upon myself to figure out how exactly I would manage to get a bat signal. And there's a nice little LED light in the back there. And this is obviously the Batman signal. And if I choose, it's very small because it has a very small LED light, but it does shine. I swear it does.
I loved
It's very hard to see because it's a bright room.
Maybe in the back.
No. Maybe in the corner. Oh. There we go. Is that better? Yeah. And what it basically is I'll take that off and show you guys kind of like the insides of actually what we did. See, I covered it so that it would look cool, but these are the ends of the LED that I put in the bottom of the cup. And see the little blobs of stuff that isn't quite wide.